Hello everyone. This is our topic about cognitive theory. What do you mean by cognitive theory? Cognitive theory is an approach to psychology that attempts to explain human behavior by understanding your thought processes. For example, a therapist is using principles of cognitive theory when they teach you how to identify maladaptive thought patterns and transform them into constructive ones. Here are some general issues on cognitive theory. Before we proceed, let us know what is the main idea behind cognitive theory. The main assumption of cognitive theory is, is that thoughts are the primary determinants of emotions and behavior. The cognitive approach to learning believes that internal mental processes can be scientifically studied. So let us proceed to Spolsky 1985. Linguistic theories have often that language is learned separately from cognitive skills and operates according to principles that differ from most learned behaviors. Wong, Fillmore, and Swain, 1984. Language and linguistic processes are often viewed as interacting with cognition, but nevertheless maintaining a separate identity that justifies investigation independent from cognitive processes. So this assumption is represented in analysis of unique language structures. Social and contextual influence on language use and the distinction between language acquisition and language learning. Cognitive psychology. Mental processing plays a central role in all learning and is the basic mediating variable for influences on learning that are external to the learner, such as task characteristic and complexity, or internal influence such as a developmental level, ability, or motivation. So how is cognitive psychology used today? There are numerous practical applications for this cognitive research, such as providing help coping with memory disorders, increasing decision-making accuracy, finding ways to help people recover from brain injury, treating learning disorders, and structuring educational curricula to enhance learning. So the examples of cognitive psychology are thinking, reasoning, judgment, attention, mental imagery, language, recognizing numbers, and memory. Cognitive theories try to get inside the mind of the child and to propose the types of mental structures and thinking processes that may be taking place. They argue that the child cannot move on to learning a new language skill until he or she is intellectually ready for the next stage. So, this theory was most forcefully presented by the Swiss psychologist Jean Piaget. One of the examples of this is that a child must have the mental ability to appreciate that people or things still exist even when they are out of sight. If they cannot appreciate this, then it would be difficult or example for the child to understand and respond appropriately to questions such as, "Where is your dad?" when the child is at nursery school and the father is at work. This cognitive ability is known as object permanence. Piaget 1972 stressed the importance of individual cognitive development as a solitary act. Biological timetables and stages of development where Basic stated that there is a consistent order of mastery of the most common function, morphemes, language. Example from English. First, in, then in, and on. Then the plural is. Last are the forms of the verb to be. Seems to be conditioned by logical complexity, plural is simple, while forms of the verb to be require sensitivity to both number and tense. So let's proceed about cognitive view on second language acquisition. Cognitivism, by its own nature, also aims its effort at explaining second language acquisition. These theories called it acquisition, but nowadays in this area of L2, the term learning is more appropriate. A cognitive theory sees second language learning as a conscious and reason-taking process involving the deliberate use of learning strategies. So learning strategies are special ways of processing information that enhance comprehension, learning, or retention of information. This explanation of language learning strongly contrasts with the behaviorist account of language learning, which sees language learning as an unconscious automatic process. Widosa 1996. Referring to adults, what is distinctive about it, or linguistic, is that it uses the abstracting potential of language to categorize and explain language itself. Language may be considered from the different to complementary points of view. The study of language itself and the human ability to acquire it and to use it in concrete situations. So both aspects should be borne in mind by L2 teachers if they are to help learners in their process of acquiring new language. So what do you mean by this cognitive view on second language acquisition? A cognitive theory of learning sees second language acquisition as a conscious and thinking process involving the deliberate use of learning strategies. Learning strategies are special ways of processing information that enhance comprehension, learning, or retention of information. Adult second language learning. However, the process of L2 learning in adults, as it is the care with engineering students, is different from a child's process of learning because adults have developed to comprehend a new language on their mother tongue principles. From a cognitive perspective, the concept of interlanguage, Spanish interlingua, tries to explain the mental processes responsible for L2 acquisition, the internal system that a learner has constructed at a point in time, and the series of interconnected systems characteristic of the learner's progress over time. Why is it harder for adults to learn a second language? According to Anne Dioje, learning a second language after the critical period of four-language learning has ended is more difficult because, as we age, the more our native language comes to dominate the linguistic map space, and the second language finds it hard to compete. Selenker 1992, who coined the term interlanguage, mentioned 5 cognitive processes related to L2 acquisition: language transfer, transfer of training, strategies of L2 language learning, L2 communication strategies, and generalization of rules and principles. Affirms that some interlanguage elements are the result of clear overt generalization of target language rules and semantic features. So considering generalization principles, Selinker affirms that some interlanguage elements are the result of clear overgeneralization of target language rules and semantic features. Focusing on meaning reduction strategies, we have observed that generalization principle may frequently turn into overgeneralization. Garudu, 1996, points out that both positive and negative transfer should be borne in mind, and that these do not always function according to the same rules. Each knowledge of the L1 and the L2, among other variables, influence learning transfer abilities. Brain-based linguistic acquisition. Mental association and memory lanes in order to form concept, our mind tends to categorize stimuli. By the time a child is 4 months old, he has categorized a great number of sounds and phonemes from his mother tongue so that he is ready to begin acquiring an acoustic image of words. So when we use language, we try to categorize the world around us by assigning a term to a concept. Cuenca and Helferty, we tend to organize our knowledge using the conceptual categories and structures we already have, basing ourselves on similarity and depending on the world around us. Context is a schematic contrast that is represented in the mind. Johnson Laird, meaning includes associative links between words and objects and experiences that result in the formation of concept. However, when we talk about linking linguistic elements with elements of the context, we mean more than establishing condition associations, as an association is not in meaning. Jachendorf hold that the data structures and the processes that store and assemble them are realized in the brain. According to the same author, linguistic structures are functional characterizations that require neural instantations. On the other hand, the essence of cognition appears to rely on mechanism of memory. Now we know that our memory is based on neural connection of the hippocampus area of the brain. The localization of various forms of memory is under research of Alexander 1996. Long-term memory refers to the information stored in the brain for long periods of time, including our store of knowledge that represent our semantic memory. Neuropsychologists consider that cognitive phenomena involve many functional modules of the cerebral cortex yet to be determined. Try to facilitate the way in which people learn and store information by using activities that help activate the several memory lanes in which the brain stores information. So, understanding both the localization and the interaction between such functional areas in the brain is now a challenge for most neuroscientists. What exactly does a neuropsychologist do? Neuropsychology is concerned with relationships between the brain and behavior. It is conduct evaluation to characterize behavioral and cognitive changes resulting from central nervous system disease on injury. Perceptive, phonological, and semantic structures. The link between the linguistic sign and its meaning is a matter of convention. Learning a language involves making links or association between a particular linguistic sign and its meaning in particular language. As we can see, the phonological and the conceptual components of a language are closely interrelated and the holds for the language as a whole as well as for the acquisition of conceptual words. Van Patten, 1996, acknowledged the importance of perceptual signings in input processing. Studies learners' attention is first directed towards meaning, therefore, they are essentially driven to process content words before anything else. Learners should also be taught to process grammatical items so as to develop positive strategies that may increase their level of accuracy in their interpretation of new items. Nevertheless, the application of these positive strategies may create, at the same time, some L2 processing problems related to learning transfer and generalization principles. Overgeneralization of mother tongue rules applied to target language materials and to semantic features may result in the wrong interpretation of word meaning, among other problems as well as shall see next. Conclusion. The cognitive theory is often known as a compromise between the behaviorist theory and enantist theory. Cognitivists believe that not only do cognitive and maturational factors influence language acquisition, but also the process of language acquisition itself may in turn affect cognitive and social skill development. The behaviorist theory explains why babies learn language while the innatist theory reveals why babies born to English-speaking parents speak English instead of Spanish. The cognitive theory seems to explain the majority of the language acquisition question and is a nice blend of the previous two theories, behaviorist and innatist. Pros and cons. Clearly there is some link between cognitive development and language acquisition. Piaget theories helps explain the order in which certain aspects of language are acquired.